Hey everyone, Bob here again, and thanks for checking back into the channel. I'm out at the gun range here again, and I've got my Arken Optic EP5 test scope with me. Now this is a scope that I've really been using to kind of push the limits, the boundaries, and the manufacturing of this actual optic. If you go back through some of the old content that I made, I started off testing the specifications and all the features of the scope, and I worked my way up to testing it, how it would hold up to the elements. We put this scope in water, we froze it, had ice all over it, snow, mud, clay, everything that you can imagine that you may encounter in the field, we tested. And really, the Arken Optic, this EP5, it tested with flying colors. Aside with water getting underneath the turrets and as it freezes getting sticky and making the turret kind of lock up a little bit, that was really the only thing that I could find that was a bit of a flaw as far as how this scope responds to the elements. Everything else has been sealed. We kept the dirt, mud, grit, and everything out. Scope's fully waterproof. No water got into any of the functional parts as far as no grit got inside the mechanisms or inside the tube or anything like that. So now what I've been doing, and if you are on the social media groups for Arken Optics, you've kind of got a clue of what I've been up to. But I've really been beating the tar out of this scope lately to see how the mechanisms inside will hold up when it comes to abuse from impacts, jarring, things of that nature. Now this scope has, boy, it's got thousands of rounds through it of different calibers. As far as I can tell, nothing has really wiggled free inside when I'm moving the turrets. I'm not getting any crunching or anything like that. But what I've also been doing is really nonsense, going over the top and trying to make this scope fail. I've been pounding nails in with this thing, beating it up. I've been just sitting on my couch twisting the turret. So these things are just getting miles and miles of use on them, as well as just ridiculous abuse, throwing this thing around. I've got my dog retrieving it. I boiled it. Somebody said, hey, have you boiled it? I boiled this thing, then froze it. I mean, it's just been one thing after another. And I'll show you guys, as I'm talking here, I'll pan up and you can see these pictures of the scope right here of what it actually looks like on the outside now. The finish is remarkably durable on these things. I've been pounding along this thing. I've had this thing rolling around the back of my truck, and it's wearing off on the areas that are really protruding, but it's pretty safe to say if you've got one of these mounted up on your rifle, your hunting gun or your target gun, and you happen to slip and do something, it's going to be hard to actually scratch this thing pretty bad. So if you're one of those guys that you like the cosmetic stuff, these things got a good finish on them. Well, let's get to what I'm doing today. So I've got this EP5 mounted up on my Ruger Precision 22 long rifle. Now this is the rifle I've been using more times than not for testing this thing and rechecking the tracking just because of ammo and affordability. Today what I've got with me, and let's talk about this real quick too, is some of this Herders. Now this is the 22 long rifle ammunition that's marketed by Cabela's. I picked this stuff up, maybe a year or two ago when 22 long rifle ammunition was really hard to get during the pandemic. I came across some of this stuff, picked a few boxes up. Well, my review on this stuff would be, unless you're using this stuff to plink at some small game or some nuisance animals, don't bother. Target-wise, this stuff is really not any more accurate than the bulk ammunition that you can buy from any of the manufacturers. So I wouldn't spend a little bit more of a premium that Cabela's is asking for this Herder stuff. But if it's the only ammunition you can find and you want something for small game or just plinking, I'd say it's okay for that. So I'm going to be running this ammunition through the Ruger here, and we're going to see if this optic will still track, if it holds zero, and see how it does. So that's enough of me chattering along here. I'm going to get behind the gun here a little bit, do some shooting, and get you guys some shoot-through footage and let you see how the clarity has held up. Now, a caveat here, some of the stuff I've done, I have kept the rubber bikinis on this thing that Arken sends them with, just because I don't want to actually break the glass. Now, I have had sand and mud and all that stuff actually get on the lenses, but I just didn't want to actually break them. So I would really want to be transparent with that. So with that, let's get behind the gun, do a little bit of shooting, get some shoot through footage for you guys to check it out. Before I get to actually firing, I'm going to explain to you guys what I did to do a quick range zeroing as far as bore sighting on the rifle. So what I did with this gun, I didn't really want to get the laser sight and do a bunch of shooting out here, trying to do this quick, is with this particular rifle, so all I did, I removed the bolt, I peered down the bore and sighted at the bore end on the target, and then I held it steady and moved my turrets around and got the crosshairs where the same place the bore was pointing. So we're going to see how close that gets us. Generally at 50 yards with these 22s, I actually get pretty darn close within a couple inches of the bullseye. So we'll see how that goes. So let's get this ammunition into the rifle after we get the bolt in here. Again, we've got the Herder's ammunition from Cabela's here. And let's see how she does. We're on paper. And we're still grouping, at least with 2 shots. This ammunition is nothing to brag about. This rifle generally shoots groups that are really impressive for the price, and it is not doing that right now. We're shooting about a 2-inch group right now at 50 yards, and you know, that's probably about what I can expect with this ammunition. So now what I'm going to do is twist this thing around. And let's do our elevation as well. See if it's still shooting the same area. Is she going to hold at 0? So far, so good. So it appears the gun is actually still holding at 0 after all the abuse I put it through. Kind of cranked around on the turrets a little bit there and put them back, and we're still impacting the same place the initial couple shots went. It's not 100% on target because, as I said, I did not zero this thing, but from where I aimed, I do have a group happening. So let's take a look at this scope and let you guys see the abuse of this thing has taken. So here it is. So if you check this thing out from tip to tail here, you can see all kinds of abuse that this thing has taken. I have literally hammered the snot out of the scope. This thing has dents and all kinds of grooves, cuts, tons of wear into it. All of the features on the scope still turn. So the magnification ring here, doing this with one hand holding the camera, but the magnification ring still turns smooth. This ocular adjustment, still smooth. Turrets are still good. No crunching or anything like that. And even the parallax is just butter smooth. The optic here, the battery's dead. I did leave that on. User fault right there. But taking a look at the scope, you can see, I mean, the finish, I mean, it has taken a hit. I mean, this thing has been slid around in the sand and everything else and banged upon, and it's banged up. But I'll tell you, for pounding screws and nails in and using this thing, you know, I even pounded tent stakes in with this optic. This tube is durable. There's actually no dents. There's gouges, but there's no dents in this tube. This thing's holding up good. All right, so here we are finishing up with this Arken Optic EP5 out here. Yet another cold range day. A year of abuse, heavy round count, and all kinds of nonsense that I've done to this thing. I'm not sure really how to finish up as far as talking about the durability of the Arken Ep5 because I can't make this thing fail unless I really go over the top. Pretty much most of the things I've been doing to the scope at this point are nonsense, and they're things that you really wouldn't expose any optic to, or you shouldn't, regardless of the brand, make, or model. But if I want to make this EP5 fail, at this point, I'm really going to have to take it up to another notch and try to actually destroy it. And I don't want to do that. The scope is still performing as it did out of the box. Aside from the finish and it being beat up and ugly, at this point, it's not failed. So if you are in the market for a scope and you're looking at the specs and the features of the Arken Optics or this EP5 and you're not happy with maybe something it has to offer, I understand that. But I'm here to say, as this review, I would not let durability or lack of durability in any way, shape, or form of the EP5 sway you from getting one. This scope really can take anything that the general target user or even hunter who hunts in extreme mountainous, desert, Arctic conditions can offer with general mishaps that might happen. This thing is still doing the job as it did out of the box. Mind you, it looks really ugly right now because it's beat up, but it's still working just great. Even the image quality, the lenses, the coatings, they've held up really well to me just wiping away dirt and grit with an old t-shirt on this thing. So that's that right now. So that's another review of the EP5, and it hasn't failed. So hey, thanks for checking back in. Leave me some comments. Let me know, have you had any mishaps with your Arken Optics or your EP5? You dropped one in the lake or the stream or down the hill, the mountain or something like that, had something break, or has it held up good? I appreciate everybody checking in. Leave a comment, hit that like button, subscribe, and keep shooting.